Aloha, I'm Austin Ashley from Action Team Realty, and today we're going to talk about price per square foot for single family homes. Now, how you've probably been doing price per square foot is you take the price of the property and divide it by the square footage. And whether that's the interior square footage or the total or the conditioned space, doesn't matter which square footage you use for this presentation. So you've been taking that price and dividing it by the square footage, and then maybe you compare it to another property where you've done the same, and you're making some conclusion about the property. Well, there's a better way to do it, and that's the purpose of this presentation. So back to how you've likely been doing it. Say you have a subdivision of homes or a neighborhood, and there have been some sales, and you take the prices of each one and divide it by each of their square footages. And maybe you come up with an average price per square foot. And then suppose you have a target home, a home that you want to price. And the idea is you take the square footage of that target home and multiply it times the average square foot that you came up with the other properties. And that gives you an idea of what the price should be of the target home. The thing is, that is a bit of a faulty or error-prone way of doing it, and let me show you why. Suppose you've got that average. Let me ask you, if you have a home of 0 square feet, what should the price be? Well, you would take your average times 0. Well, the price should be 0. But let's think about that. A single-family home of 0 square feet, isn't that vacant land? And doesn't vacant land have some value? We sell a lot of vacant land, and it definitely has value. So there must be something going on with the calculation that we have a look at. So let's do that here. All right. So on the screen, I have this simple graph, and we have price over here on the vertical axis and square footage. And then it should give us a price per square foot, this nice purple line. And the bigger the house, the higher the price should be. That makes sense. That just should work, right? Well, the example that I pointed out down here at 0, when it's 0 square feet and 0 price, that's where we run into the problem. A better way to do it is like this, where at 0 square feet, there is some price that represents the land value, starting off higher and then building our square footage as we go along. And one could say, well, what difference does this make? Why? There are 2 different lines on the chart. Why should I care? Well, you should care for the following reason. If you're down here at the lower end of the square footage, if you are on the purple line, the way you have been doing it, you are likely to undervalue low square footage homes. You can see the gap here between the 2 lines. And conversely, you are likely to overvalue, if you're up here on the purple line, high square footage homes. There's only one little area where the lines cross where it really wouldn't matter how you do it. So it really does require doing it in a different way if you want to be more accurate. So how do we do that? First, what you do is when you do your average price per square foot, you subtract the land value from the prices. So where do you get a land value? Well, maybe if it's a neighborhood or subdivision of homes, there's been a recent vacant land sale that you can use, or maybe the tax assessment has a vacant land value, or maybe a neighboring subdivision, there was a vacant lot sold, and you can get some sense of the vacant land value. But it's important to do that and subtract it from each of the prices. So say you have 4 homes that you're using as comparables, you subtract that same vacant land value from each of those prices. Then you divide, after you subtracted the land value, then you divide it by the square footage, whichever square footage that you're using. Then you calculate your average. If you had 4, you add up the 4, divide by that number, and then that would give you the average price per square foot. You then, if you're wanting to price a home, you take the square footage of the target home, multiply it times that average, and then importantly, add the land value back in. That same land value that you subtracted out on the price before you divided the square footage. Now you add that land value back in. And what happens then, it puts you on this straight line rather than on this line here. And you're going to come up with a much more accurate way of doing price per square foot, particularly for high square footage or low square footage homes. Now, um, I'm not a big proponent of pricing. I've been a long-term realtor, and I'm not a big proponent of pricing using price per square foot. The reason is that in actual terms of buyers' behavior, this is never a straight line. Depending upon the market, the line could curve down or the line could curve up. If we look at actually what is the behavior of buyers as they're buying their homes, and looking at the square footage value. And the math can get quite complex in describing those lines. They're called logarithmic and exponential equations. Uh, my guess is you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. What realtors do is visit as many homes as they can. And then when they sell, we see what feature set got the best pricing. And then when we see a new or target home, we have an idea of how will buyers then, given that prior knowledge, purchase based upon all the conditions in the home that we're looking to price. In my opinion, that's a much more accurate way of doing it than using just the square footage of the home, even if you use the complex equations, because our goal is to get it right for our clients. That's always our aim. So that's some information on price per square foot, at least the way that we do it. I really appreciate you watching. I'm Austin Ashley. Aloha for now.